Well, good morning and welcome to Zen Fits. And here it is Monday morning. And yesterday, if you remember yesterday morning's talk, it was before I was going to Richmond to give a talk at the Mindfulness or Heartfulness Meditation Center in Richmond up on East Perham Road. And I was so surprised to see what a great facility this was and what a nice crowd they had. They had it was a 3-day class on meditation, and I discovered I was the keynote speaker. the last talk of the class, and I was really honored that they took a risk on me and invited an unknown to give a talk, and it turned out to be very nice. Nobody left, everybody stayed, and my talk received a lot of well, they seem to enjoy it, and I enjoyed it. I even got a cup. See, it's looks like a little yin yang looking for itself, or two koi in a pond. And there's a large Indian community there, and I really felt at home there because when I first began my yoga path in 1970. I was introduced to the vast open sky of Hindu mythology and the gods and goddesses of the Eastern tradition. But it was more than that. It's a whole different paradigm or way of looking at reality, a way of being in reality that is different from the West. And each are kind of opposite. And it really was not until the 60s that the Eastern paradigm, the Eastern knowledge, came pouring into the West with such a profound effect, which was the 60s. But before that, it was trickling in, like the Upanishads, which was, when that was translated back in the 1700s or whenever, and when it hit the West, it was around the time of the American Transcendentalists, Emerson, Thoreau, Emily Dickinson, Walt Whitman, and this is a literary tradition. I remember when I was studying literature, Transcendentalism and Romanticism in England, Transcendentalism in the West was my favorite literature. And it was all influenced by the first translations of the ancient Indian scriptures or the text, the Upanishads and the Vedas. This was a bombshell of knowledge to hit the realism and the materialism of the West, you see. And it's still going off. So I thought we would talk today about what happens when East meets West. It's kind of like two rivers. And what happened? What's created when they come together? See, these are all very spiritual, rich metaphors of rivers coming together, and and it gives birth. You see, because these it's sex. When male and female come together, these two rivers come together. You create stuff. It's the yin and the yang. It's the two opposites. It's gin and vermouth. That's what I love. In a martini, when the river of gin and the river of vermouth come together, you have a martini. You see, this is the formula for creativity. And so even here in this meditation center, Heartfulness Meditation Center. I keep wanting to say mindfulness. That's created when East meets West. So this center, which is a meditation, so is meditation created when East meets West? Well, let's take a look at what the East and the West, how are these opposites? So I wrote this up here. The East, of course, is an ancient, the original knowledge. It goes back, statues of Shiva were found in the Indus Valley that go back 10,000 years. The meditating Shiva. So yoga, but Alexander the Great, when he went to India, found yogis and they were sitting on a hot rock, and Alexander said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Well, you have to come here and sit on the hot rock if you want to talk to us." And Buddhism came out of the Indian yoga tradition and knowledge. The Buddha was a yogi. Actually, what he did was, according to Alan Watts, he made Hinduism exportable. So Buddha is Hinduism refined and exported, refined of all the idealism and exported. And Zen, which I love, is kind of like Buddhism refined even more. So it's kind of like it's all ground down to its essence, you see. But anyway, let's take a look at the obvious differences. One thing you notice about Hinduism and Indian yoga, and there is a rich, and I use the word mythology not in the term of fancy, but in the terms of God and goddesses and the stories of God and goddesses. India is very rich. So there's always been this reference in India, thought, to the ideal, to the interior and the gods and goddesses exterior, and to the interior self. And the material world, you just let it go. You don't have to regulate it. And if you ever go to India, you'll notice that there is, compared to us, it's very unregulated, and it kind of like disturbs us, Where are the traffic lights? Where are the traffic cops? Where are the regulations to keep all this thing in order, you see? There it's just helter-skelter. Just a bunch of ants. But the ants, if you ever notice anything about ants, they all seem to know what to do. If you disturb an ant colony, everybody's running around like an Indian traffic intersection, but they all don't bump into each other. They all navigate, So there's kind of like an organic law there that is different from the imposed law of the West. This goes back to the original idea of God. In India, the idea of God is that God is creation, that God creates himself in his own creation. In the West, with the Yahweh, God is separate from creation, like a potter is separate from the clay. So God is not the clay. He makes the clay, blows life into it, and says, "Oh, look what I've created." And then he gets mad at you if you don't obey his laws. But in India, there is no such idea as an external creator of the law. God is creation itself. And that creative power is Shakti, the goddess. She has many names, just as the Godhead has many names. Each has their own story. You get to pick the one you like. You get to pick the one you grow up in. You get to pick your own. Forgot what it's called, but your personal God. But they all point beyond. They all point to the unknown, unconceptualized one, you see. But that one, you see, is not the one that all the gods point to is beyond space and time. So it's inside and outside. Where can you go that God is not? So everything is sacred. The ants, sacred animals, your monkey god, the elephant's sacred. Everything is sacred, you see. So there's a completely different paradigm here. What the emphasis in the Indian is the emphasis to the whole, and in the West, we're interested in the real, which is material, this and that, you see. So we want to fix material. So you got to organize it. And material, if you want to organize and change material, you have to impose a law on it. You have to impose order. Big difference is, say, England and India. These two got married illegally. And if you notice something, English like to impose order. Look at the English garden. Now, we've been watching Midsummer Murders. And every English house everywhere, there's these perfectly manicured gardens. So what is a garden but nature ordered to some classical design? But then you have India with the jungle. Nobody orders the jungle just grows the way it wants. And so there's completely different, let nature take its course. You got to organize nature. And these are two different ways of being in the world. Should I follow my own nature or should I follow the law? This divides America right now. One commandment is follow your own nature, follow your dream. Don't follow what other people define yourself. Don't let other people define you. Don't just be obedient to some law. Follow your conscience. Follow your nature. But then the religious commandment of America is, don't follow your nature. That's fallen, that's evil, that's sinful. The devil's running that. Follow God's law. Follow the scripture. Obey the law. Obey God's word. Obey the bishop. Obey the church. Obey the pope. So there's this obey, and then there's this be free, follow yourself. These are contradictory imperatives. Makes us neurotic or very creative. So this idea of, in the West, points to realism, and in the East there's the pointing to the beyond, to the ideal, to the God. So the reference is different. In the East, the reference is to the gods, the guru, beyond, and there's not, the physical world just kind of takes care of itself. In the West, there's the reference to the physical world, and there is no beyond. There is no, in science, there is no God out there telling everybody what to do. Science just bypasses that. So science just bypasses idealism and just sticks with the truth of the facts. What are the facts? The facts are the truth. And if enough people agree on the facts, then that's an agreed upon truth. But you have to be able to see it with your senses. You have to be able to look at it and taste it and feel it, you see. Empirical evidence for something to real. If you just say, I saw a unicorn, well, that doesn't exist unless you can go get a picture of a unicorn, and even then it'll be suspect, you see. So this whole idea of realism is grounded on fact. This was the scientific method that burst into bloom in the Enlightenment after the death of the Middle Ages. So you end up with a West that is very rich in material benefits, unbelievable material comforts, and but very empty on the inner knowledge, very empty on the spiritual well-being, very empty on the contentment, very empty on peace of mind. The West is, with all its riches and comforts, is very stressed, very unsettled, very fearful, very threatened, you see. Something is not right. Something's not working right. Things are going bad. The earth is getting burned up, you see. Something is not... This great rational Western realism somehow has gone astray. We've missed something. What have we missed? We thought we had it all. Utopia in time, in history. In the 50s, there was this great scientific utopia that by now we would all be sitting around flying in little cars like the Jetsons. Everything would be organized, and we would just have to push buttons and everything would be delivered by robots. Our slaves, the machines would be our slaves, and we would be in a scientific utopia forever. It didn't work out that way, did it? So this whole emphasis from the West, you see, has gone to its extreme, and the East has has gone to its extreme, because it needed to do something about the material world. And the West needs to do something about the interior world. So you have this denial of the interior, and in the East, the denial of the exterior. And so now they come together like two rivers. So the question is, what are they going to create, you see? When two rivers come together. I know this happened in my life because when I began the practice of yoga in 1970, these two rivers came together. I had become dissatisfied with the Western river as the only river. I'd become dissatisfied with philosophy and rationalism and Christianity. As I had told my story, I wanted to become a minister, and the seminary rejected me, and that was the best thing that ever happened. Happy day. In fact, the day I got rejected, I was listening, the Edwin Hawkins musical gospel just came out, Oh, Happy Day. When Jesus walks, oh, happy day. And I remember that song, and I remember that day that my dream of becoming, finding a place in Christianity was rejected. And so I don't blame the church or anything, no. I didn't fit. It was the best thing they could have done. I did not fit the institution. I was not going to function in an institution where I had to obey the law. I was interested in my own nature. Who am I? That's what I wanted to know. Who am I? Not who should I be according to you, but who am I, you see. So this is a whole different quest. So today we have them coming together, and what I've ended up with is, for me, these two came together in the same way that the Buddha came together. Now the Buddha was Siddhartha Gautama became the Buddha, which just means the awakened one. And the awakened one means the one who unifies the opposites. Many ways to put it. But the awakened mind unifies all opposites in itself. So everything is integrated in the awakened mind. There is no more schism or schizophrenia or duel between opposites. There's no more conflict in the awakened mind. So we all want to be an awakened mind. We all want to be a mind that is unified with the external world. The internal and the external are one in the awakened mind. That's very simple. That's all it is, really. You have no conflict with the world, or your spouse, or your cat, or anything. Oh, you can have little stumbles and conflicts and stuff, but they're always a source of creativity, and they always have a laugh behind them. So when the awakened mind is an integrating mind, like MacGyver. MacGyver is a metaphor, the TV show, for the integrative mind. Whenever he's in a fix, he just uses what's given to get out of the fix. He creates a way to get out of the fix by integrating whatever's given. So the awakened mind just uses what's given. You see, there's no future for the awakened mind. It's just what is. What is this? What does this moment offer? And out of this moment, I'll create myself. Out of this moment, whatever's given, I can't have what's not given. I can't imagine what should be given. I just have to see or look. So it's realism. I have to look at what's given, and it's idealism in that I create a new idea. So see how this is a creative union. And that's what Buddhism, that's what the awakened mind of the Buddha is. The awakened mind of the Buddha is a creative mind. It creates reality out of what's given, and it moves what's given into a new idea that never existed before. It doesn't just recycle what's given, which is what we do. It creates a new that never existed before out of what's given. So the awakened mind is a creative mind. The best example is an artist. An artist creates in whatever field the artist is in, paint, words, dance, whatever the art, a craft, whatever it is, you create something that never existed before out of what's given. That's the same creative force that creates our bodies. That's going on all the time. That creative force is, in Hindu mythology, Shiva. Shiva, who is either in a meditative pose or in a dance. So Shiva is the metaphor for this place, this magical alchemical place where you create out of what's given. If you're in a prison, you create out of what's given. If you're in the desert, you create out of what the desert gives you. So that's the realism. You create out of what's real. But the idealism is that you're creating an idea. Everything, so the idea of something new comes before you do it. So if you're an artist, you have I feel there's something there's something to be creative, and you struggle and you say, that's not it, that's not it, that's not it. Finally, the idea comes, that's it, and then everything falls together. Boom, 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 bam. You see. So the idea then is the idealism and the realism. So these two are married in the awakened mind, which Buddha is a metaphor for. There is no such thing as a Buddha. There is you. You're the Buddha. You see, that's the thing about Buddhism, is that everyone has Buddha nature. Everyone is potentially awakened. Everyone has the awakened mind. It's not something that other people have and you don't. It's not something Buddha had and you don't. You see, and that's kind of like the trap Christianity fell into when it says, well, only Jesus could do that. And I'm not Jesus, so I got to just follow, I just got to fit in line. I just got to fit, you see. But I can never fit because I'm denying my own Jesus nature, you see. So Buddha nature is basically everyone's nature. All sentient beings are Buddha nature, says the Buddha. That doesn't mean that, it just means everyone is that creative potential. So an ant and a cat both create themselves out of what's given. You see, so we're all creating ourselves out of what's given. But we have to accept everything that's given. And this is where the West falls into a trap, because this discriminating mind that the West awakened in the scientific method also has a downside to it. And the downside to it is best described in the myth of Adam and Eve in the garden. So they were in a unity state of way. They were in unity with the world, and then when they ate the apple, that was a metaphor for the discriminating mind that says this is good and this is good, bad, and this is good. So I discriminate. And I divide reality into good and bad, and I just want to get the good and get rid of the bad. Well, that's very helpful in making stuff, but it's not helpful in finding unity, because you're finding unity by splitting things apart into the good and the bad. But reality is all good. So if reality as being is all good, God is all good, if I divide God into good and bad, well, then I'm creating a split in myself, and now I'm chasing myself to become good while I'm being plagued by the bad. I can't get rid of the bad. So the bad becomes my shadow, you see. I'm running to the good, and the bad is my opposite side. The bad is my unconscious. So whatever I do turns into bad, because I brought it with me. I did my work. See, this is this thing. So this unity transcends this split, you see, between the good and the bad, so that, while things are good and bad at the same time, the whole is good. So both become present. The whole is the urge to create a new unity out of the divided world that we perceive, the fragmented world. Art, I was just looking at, on the internet, on Facebook, there was a picture of Guernica, or the Picasso picture of the Spanish Civil War, which everyone is familiar with. This very fragmented picture, you know. And so Picasso was a unified mind. He was an integrating mind. But he was making paintings of a fragmented world that the Western mind lives in. So his paintings are realistic in that they are picturing this fragmented, broken, shattered world of the West that can't find unity, you see, because it's always dividing everything into good and bad. So his pictures are basically very realistic pictures of an abstracted, of a broken reality that is suffering. So the suffering of the fragmentation, you see, is the suffering of Christ on the cross. And the resurrection is the resurrection of the awakening mind. It all comes together if we stop getting locked into our view and saying, well, that view is wrong and mine's right. All views are right. Everything fits into the whole when the whole becomes what you create. When the creative mind is awakened, you create the whole. When the awakening mind is activated and comes into being, you create God. You create the whole. You create the totality. And when in that creation, everything is unified. And everything works. Because there's no conflict in that creation. You are the world and the world is you. So each of us is the creator of our world. You say, how can that be? Because all these there's billions of worlds out there, billions of human beings, billions of worlds. Yet at the same time, they are all one. You see, there's one mind, but many minds. There's your mind, my mind. Each mind is a world. And we all create this world, we live in it, and when we die, we take it with us. Like a bubble. Poop, you see. But there is the one that each of these is. So we're all the one and the many. And this is not understandable in this world, in the Western world, that only recognizes individual things as being the many. There is no one that unifies all things in the West, except in some theory. But that's just another idea, you see. So anyway, this I really felt like that this yesterday at the meditation center, you had an equal amount of people from India and from the West, you know, and there was a large crowd there, and these two worlds were meeting there, and they created a meditation center where you actually, just like Buddha, sit under the tree and you allow the two worlds to mix and make love, and for you to, out of these opposites, you create yourself as a unified being, as a unified mind, you see. And this is the way the world works. The world is creative because it's constantly taking opposites and creating a new whole. And then the whole breaks apart, and then the new opposites emerge, and a new whole creates. So life is a constant, creative, dynamic fountain of dying and being born. Dying of the old, born of the new. So the Buddha, the awakened mind, sits right where these two rivers come together. So the awakened mind is constantly letting go and constantly creating, clinging to nothing, seeing everything, clinging to nothing because everything is dying, but everything is also being born. The end and the beginning are one, you see, at the place where the two rivers meet. So thank you for checking in this morning, and I'll see you this evening at martini time.